Right now, I am going to explain to you how I put the copper frets on the neck of the cigar box guitar. First, I want to go over the tools that I'm going to use. So here's our copper frets, 14 gauge wire, already pre-cut to 8-inch lengths. I find that works well for your typical 1.5 wide cigar box guitar neck with a 1/4-inch fretboard on top of it. These pliers I'm going to use to twist the wire as I install them on the fretboard. Then when I need to cut them, I'm going to use these nipper pliers. After I do that, we'll have some sharp edges, so I'm going to use the file to file them down. It's a lot easier to do that before you bend over the frets. I'll show you that we'll be bending over the frets. Next, I actually then will use this hammer to bend over the wire. You'll see. And this is a sacrificial one. You'll see this plastic head on there. I'm not worried about destroying it, and those wire, especially the ends, will mar up your fret hammer, so be careful. I'll use the fret hammer as I'm going along for the purposes of bending the wire into shape. It's a good idea to try to get the wire on as straight as you possibly can, because as you're tightening the wire on, if it's as straight as possible, you'll get it nice and tight. If it's crooked, when you straighten it out, you'll notice that your wire will become loose. Once I have the wire in place and bent over, as you'll see as we install it, then I'm going to use these pliers to make an additional bend in the wire to really tighten things up. So it's important that you have the wire as straight as possible when you do that. But remember, it's a primitive instrument. Perfect isn't necessarily required, it's just desired. Then when we're all done putting in the frets, and I usually do this at the end when I'm all done doing them, but I'll show it as we put on one fret. Then I'm going to use this hammer, this metal hammer, to hammer the twisted and cut end of my fret into the neck of the guitar to make it nice and tight. All right, let's move the tools out of the way and go for it. I like resting my neck on these carpet-colored 2x4s so I don't damage them as I go. What you want to do is you want to make sure that your frets are straight before you go ahead and do this. It's just a lot easier. And pick the straightest end of the fret, because that's the part that you're going to actually have sitting on the fretboard. I leave somewhere around an inch and a quarter of wire sticking out the end. Bend it over tightly over the slots that I've made inside my neck. Once I've wrapped it around, I'll use my fret hammer, tap it, make sure it's tight to the neck and the fretboard. Then, what you want to do is you want to bend this over, because the idea is, as you'll notice, I'm keeping somewhere around a 1/4 inch down as I twist these wires. So I'm going to bend this over, bring this one up. Now, what I've been doing is I've been wrapping this wire over this wire. I don't think it really matters which way you go, but probably makes sense to make sure you go the same way each time. I'm going to bend it over, and at about a 1/4 inch, which is the thickness of my fretboard, I'm going to start the twist in my wire. And I'm finding that 2 twists is a pretty good start, because then I can get my pliers on there to finish twisting it. All right, now again, try to keep this wire as straight as possible as you go. All right, make sure you're in the groove that you've already cut on your fretboard. You can read a little bit more about how I do that in the blog post. I'm going to twist the wire to tighten it up. I like to end up with about somewhere between 3 and 4 twists when I'm all done. Well, see, I got to make sure that's inside the groove to make sure then it'll be tight. All right, flip it over. See how it's a little bit crooked? I'm going to straighten it out. Now notice it's loose again, so I'm going to tighten it up one more time. All right, now I'm going to nip off the excess wire. What I find is you cut it square to the wire. It's going to make it a lot easier to do the filing to get that rough edge off of it. Cut it square to the wire. Then I'm going to use my file. Now, most files cut in only one direction. A lot of people go back and forth, back and forth. There's not a lot of problem to that, but they actually only cut in one direction, the forward direction. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to file the end of my wire to get the sharp edges off of it before I bend it over. Little feel test to see where the burrs are still on there. That's actually pretty good. All right, again, make sure it's fairly straight. All right, on there. Come in square down if you can on the fretboard, but remember, it's a primitive instrument. Now, that hammer that I had with the sacrificial head on it, now I'm going to use this to bend this over and tap it in so that they're fairly straight as they go along. Just looks more visually pleasing. Tap it in there. Now, again, what I usually do is, again, make sure it's straight as possible. Then, 1/4 inch, I find, is the best amount of bearing right here. And I set my pliers so I'm just slightly squeezing the wire so I can stay on the wire, but I'm not going to pinch it or mar it too much. All right? So then, right below the twist on the wire, I'm going to put my pliers in place, tighten them up, and then I'm going to give it a little bit of a turn. Again, don't worry about perfect, because you're going to come back after you're all done and take care of this. Now, look at that. That's actually not on too bad. It's nice and straight. All right? Now, what I'll do is I'll finish the rest of the neck, and then I'll go back and I'll straighten everything out. I'm going to hammer down the frets so they're seated in there and they're straight. All right? Do the best I can to make the back look straight. All right? And when it's all done, I'm going to then use these pliers one more time and cinch these. Go back and cinch them to make sure they're good and tight. And once they're all tight, I use this other hammer. I don't know, maybe 1920 or something. This was my father-in-law's. I inherited it from him, I think. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to tap these without marring the wood. Be careful. Tap these in, right, so that it's a little bit more pleasant on your fingers when you're playing. And we're getting rid of as much of that cut end as we possibly can. All right? But typically I would do that after I'm all done fretting it. So that's how it works. What I would really encourage you to do to get more detail on this is read my blog post about this. All right? That's going to complement this video. I hope that was helpful, and I look forward to the next one.